Have you ever felt the icy grip of fear tighten around your heart, even in the familiarity of your own home? I hadn't until that fateful night in February. It was the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, in the bustling city of Johannesburg, South Africa. The city was alive with couples celebrating, laughter echoing through the streets. I had just returned to my apartment after a long day at work, looking forward to a quiet evening alone. As I unlocked my door, a strange sensation washed over me, a feeling of being watched. I shrugged it off, attributing it to exhaustion, and stepped inside. The apartment was just as I had left it, neat, organized, and utterly silent. I set my bag down and noticed a single red rose lying on my coffee table. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't received flowers, nor had I bought any. A secret admirer, perhaps. But how did they get into my apartment? I picked up the rose, its petals soft and velvety. Attached was a small note, written in elegant cursive, "Be mine forever." A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't romantic, it was invasive. Determined to shake off the unease, I tossed the rose and note into the trash and headed to the kitchen to make dinner. As I chopped vegetables, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I had the unmistakable feeling that I wasn't alone. I turned around, knife in hand, and scanned the room. Nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of the city. I laughed nervously, chastising myself for being paranoid, and returned to my cooking. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible, coming from the direction of my bedroom. My blood ran cold. I lived alone. I set the knife down and crept towards the hallway, each step heavy with dread. "Come to me," the whisper beckoned, seductive yet sinister. I reached my bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. Taking a deep breath, I pushed it open. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the city lights filtering through the curtains. In the center of my bed sat a figure, shrouded in shadows. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for the light switch. The room flooded with light, and the figure vanished. In its place was another red rose, identical to the first, with a note that read, "You can't escape me." Panic set in. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but the battery was dead, a full charge drained to nothing. I rushed to the door, intent on fleeing, but it wouldn't budge. The locks were undone, yet it felt as though an invisible force held it shut. The temperature in the room plummeted, and my breath formed misty clouds. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted, my voice trembling. A cold breeze swept through the apartment, carrying with it the scent of roses. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Be mine forever." Desperation took hold. I ran to the window and tried to open it, but it too was sealed shut. My reflection in the glass stared back at me, eyes wide with terror. But then, it smiled, a wicked, malevolent grin that wasn't my own. I stumbled back, tripping over the coffee table, and fell to the floor. The room seemed to close in around me, the walls pulsating with a dark energy. The whispers became chants, echoing in my mind. "Be mine forever. Be mine forever." I covered my ears, squeezing my eyes shut, willing it all to stop. Suddenly, everything went silent. The air grew still, the oppressive weight lifting. Cautiously, I opened my eyes. The apartment was back to normal. The roses were gone, the notes vanished, and the door now swung open easily. My phone buzzed to life, displaying missed calls and messages. Had it all been a hallucination? A stress-induced nightmare? I didn't wait to find out. I grabbed my keys and fled the apartment, vowing never to return. To this day, I don't know what happened that night, but every Valentine's Day, I receive a single red rose with a note that reads, "You can't escape me." Have you ever heard footsteps behind you, only to turn around and find nothing? I used to think it was just paranoia until that night in February. It was the 22nd of February, in a quiet suburb on the outskirts of Lagos, Nigeria. The sun had set, and the neighborhood was wrapped in a blanket of stillness. I was coming back from a late shift, exhausted and eager to get home. The streets were empty, only dim streetlights flickering above. As I walked down the familiar road to my house, I heard them footsteps echoing behind me. Slow and deliberate, I glanced over my shoulder, but the street was empty. I quickened my pace, the footsteps matching mine. Never closer, never further. I told myself it was just my imagination, but the sound persisted, each step echoing in the silence. I turned around again, my heart pounding. Nothing. The street was deserted, shadows stretching along the pavement. I let out a shaky breath, laughing at my paranoia. But then, a whisper, low and guttural, coming from the darkness. My blood ran cold. I couldn't make out the words, but it was there, raspy, like dry leaves scraping against concrete. I backed away, my eyes scanning the shadows. A figure stood at the end of the street, just barely visible under the dim light. It was tall, unnaturally so, its body wrapped in tattered cloth that fluttered in the breeze. Its face was obscured, but its eyes, they were hollow, empty sockets staring straight at me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there, watching. I turned and ran, my heart racing, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. I didn't look back. I reached my front door, fumbling with my keys, my hands trembling. The footsteps were behind me now, faster, heavier, closing in. I swung the door open, slamming it shut and locking it. I pressed my back against the door, listening. Silence, just the sound of my own breathing, rapid and shallow. I peeked through the peephole, but the street was empty. The figure was gone. I tried to calm myself, convincing myself it was a prank, a trick of the light. I moved away from the door and went to the kitchen to get some water. But as I turned on the tap, the lights flickered, the temperature dropped, the air growing cold and heavy. My breath fogged in front of me, and the house was suddenly deathly quiet. Too quiet. I felt it before I heard it, an icy presence, suffocating, watching me. The whispers returned, echoing through the house, seeping from the walls. I couldn't understand the words, but the malice was unmistakable. I ran to the living room, the shadows dancing on the walls, growing longer, darker. I grabbed my phone, desperate to call someone, anyone, but the screen was black, unresponsive. The whispers grew louder, the air thick with dread. My heart pounded, panic setting in. Then, a knock on the door. Slow, deliberate. 3 knocks, each one echoing through the silence. I froze, my body rigid with fear. The knocking continued, rhythmic, relentless. I crept to the door, my body shaking. Peering through the peephole, my blood turned to ice. The figure was there, standing on my porch, its face inches from the door, its head tilted unnaturally to the side, the hollow eyes staring directly at me. Its mouth opened, a gaping void, and the whispers poured out, louder, more insistent. I stumbled back, covering my ears, the words swirling in my head. The lights flickered again, then went out, plunging the house into darkness. I heard the door creak, the sound of hinges groaning. I hadn't unlocked it. My blood ran cold as I heard the footsteps inside, heavy and deliberate, moving slowly toward me. I backed into the corner, my eyes wide, straining to see in the dark. The whispers grew closer, the air freezing around me. I could feel it standing there, its presence suffocating, its hollow eyes burning into me. The last thing I heard was its voice, low and guttural, a single word, mine. When I woke up, it was morning. The sun was shining through the windows, the house warm and silent. But the front door was wide open, the lock broken. I asked my neighbors if they saw anyone, but they all said the same thing. No one had been there, but they did hear the whispers, echoing through the night. I moved out the next day, but sometimes I still hear the footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate, and when I turn around, The street is always empty, believe me or not. But if you ever hear footsteps behind you when no one's there, don't look back. It might be waiting for you, too. Have you ever felt the chill of being watched, even when you're alone? I never believed in the supernatural until that night in February. It was the 13th of February, a day like any other in our village nestled along the Tanzanian coast. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, and a cool breeze whispered through the coconut palms. I was heading home after visiting a friend, the path familiar and comforting. The evening was peaceful, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold. I could hear distant laughter from the village, children playing, the soft hum of life. But as I continued down the narrow dirt path, something changed. The air grew cold, unnaturally cold, as if winter had touched our tropical land. The vibrant sounds of the evening faded, replaced by an eerie silence. No crickets, no rustling leaves, nothing. Just an oppressive quiet that wrapped around me like a shroud. It was as though the world was holding its breath. I quickened my pace, trying to shake off the unease that was settling in my bones. That's when I saw it out of the corner of my eye, a shadow flitting across the path. Too quick to be a person, too large to be an animal. I stopped and turned, my eyes scanning the bushes. There was nothing there, just darkness. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was my imagination playing tricks on me. But the chill in the air persisted, and a faint, sulphurous odor began to creep in. It was sharp and acrid, like something rotten, burning. I covered my nose, my stomach churning at the stench. Then I heard a fluttering of wings, but heavier, more deliberate. It echoed around me, circling, but no bird was in sight. The sound grew louder, closer, and I felt a rush of cold air sweep past me, rustling my clothes. I looked up, expecting to see bats or night birds, but the sky was empty, just an expanse of darkness. My flashlight flickered, its beam dancing across the trees, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to reach out toward me. My heart raced, thudding against my chest. I tried to steady my breathing, forcing myself to keep walking, but the path ahead seemed to stretch endlessly, the familiar surroundings becoming twisted, unrecognizable. Then, a whisper, faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably there.
Leave now.
The words slithered into my ear, cold and hollow. I froze, every muscle tensing. My eyes darted around, but I was alone. Or at least, I appeared to be. Panic surged through me. I broke into a run, the solace of my sandals slapping against the dirt as I sped down the path. I didn't dare look back. The whispering continued, now accompanied by soft laughter, mocking, echoing all around me. The trees seemed to close in, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. In my panic, I stumbled off the path and found myself standing before an old hut I had never seen before. Its walls were crumbling, vines snaking up the sides, the door slightly ajar. A chill ran down my spine, but I felt an inexplicable pull, as if the hut was calling to me. The laughter faded, replaced by a suffocating silence. I took a step closer, my feet moving on their own. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing in the stillness. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the scent of decay. The walls were covered in strange symbols, etched deep into the wood, curling and twisting in patterns I couldn't understand. In the center of the room stood a large mirror, its surface dusty and cracked. But as I moved closer, I realized something was wrong. The mirror reflected the room, the walls, the symbols, but not me. I was standing right in front of it, but my reflection was missing. A cold shiver ran through me, my breath hitching. I took a step back, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure standing in the reflection, its form distorted, eyes glowing a deep, menacing red. It was watching me, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I spun around, but the room was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was closer, its eyes locked onto mine. My heart stopped. It moved, slowly, stepping closer and closer until its face was pressed against the glass. a wicked smile spreading across its twisted features. The lights flickered, and the room grew colder. I tried to move, to run, but my body was frozen, paralyzed with fear. The figure's hand pressed against the mirror, its fingers long and skeletal, nails sharp and black. Then, it stepped out. The glass rippled like water as the figure emerged, its body contorting, limbs bending at impossible angles. It was tall, impossibly tall, its shadow stretching across the room, swallowing the light. Its face was a mask of darkness, eyes burning red, mouth twisted into a grotesque grin. It moved towards me, its body jerking and twitching with each step. I could hear it breathing, a raspy, hollow sound that sent ice through my veins. It reached out, its hand brushing against my face, cold as death. It leaned in, its mouth close to my ear, and whispered, "You were warned." My vision blurred, darkness creeping in. I felt myself falling, sinking into the cold, suffocating blackness, and then nothing. I woke up on the path, the morning sun warming my face. My head was pounding, my body aching as if I had been thrown. I sat up, looking around. The village was in the distance, peaceful, untouched. I wanted to believe it was just a nightmare, a figment of my imagination, but the sulfuric smell lingered, faint but unmistakable. And in my hand, I was clutching a small mirror, the same from the hut. Its surface was cracked, and deep within the glass, I saw them two glowing red eyes watching me, waiting. I threw the mirror, but it didn't break. It landed on the ground, the eyes still staring, that wicked smile faintly visible in the reflection. I ran, not looking back, my heart racing. To this day, I don't know what I encountered. I never spoke of it to anyone, afraid they would think I was crazy. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear the fluttering of wings outside my window, and in the darkness, I see those glowing red eyes watching me. Believe me or not, but beware the shadows that lurk after dusk. Some legends are real, and they never let go.